He saw a black man behind the wheel of a luxury SUV and decided the story before he heard a single word. He saw a young black woman in the passenger seat and thought fear would make her small. He thought the badge on his chest made him untouchable. But he did not know the quiet man he was about to drag onto the pavement was Judge Marcus Bennett, one of the most respected federal judges in America. And he did not know the young woman beside him was Nia Bennett, the daughter he had raised to stand tall when hatred tried to make her bow. Before the sun went down, one arrogant officer would lose everything. The rain had just stopped over Atlanta, leaving the streets shining beneath the afternoon light. Downtown traffic crawled between glass towers, courthouse steps, coffee shops, hotels, and government buildings that seemed to hum with power. The city was alive in that restless way only Atlanta could be alive. Car horns, sirens, people crossing streets with briefcases in one hand and phones in the other. A city full of ambition, a city full of stories. Inside a black Lincoln Navigator, Judge Marcus Bennett drove in silence. He was not a man who needed to fill quiet spaces with noise. At 62 years old, he had learned that silence could be sharper than anger. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a dark blue tie. His hair was silver at the temples, close-cut and neat. His face carried the calm gravity of a man who had spent decades listening to people lie, cry, beg, rage, confess, and break. Beside him sat his daughter, Nia Bennett. Nia was 32, brilliant, composed, and exhausted from a morning that had demanded more of her heart than she wanted to admit. She wore a cream blouse beneath a tailored navy blazer, her natural curls pulled back, her laptop bag resting at her feet. She had just finished speaking at a civil rights panel at Emory, where students had asked her how to keep believing in justice when the people sworn to protect it often seemed to betray it. Nia had answered with grace, but the question had stayed with her. How do you keep believing in justice when injustice knows your name? Marcus glanced at her. You were quiet after the BA panel, he said. Nia looked out the window at the wet streets. I was thinking. That can be dangerous, Marcus said gently. She smiled, but only a little. One of the students asked me if the system can really change. I gave the right answer, the hopeful answer, but sometimes I wonder if hope is just something we say because the truth is too heavy. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Hope is not pretending the truth is light, he said. Hope is carrying the truth without letting it crush your spine. Nia looked at him then. That sounds like one of your courtroom speeches. It is one of my father's speeches, Marcus said. She laughed softly. I should have known. They were heading from Midtown toward the federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta. Marcus had a private meeting, scheduled with a senior investigator from the Department of Justice. It was not on his public calendar. It was not the kind of meeting announced in press releases. For months, Marcus had been quietly reviewing sealed reports about a corruption network spreading through city police units, private law firms, towing companies, bail bondsmen, and even courthouse clerks. People were being stopped without cause. Cars were being seized, charges were being inflated, settlements were being manipulated. And the victims were almost always black, Latino immigrants or poor people passing through the wrong neighborhoods in the wrong cars at the wrong time. Nia did not know all the details. Marcus had protected her from most of it, not because she was weak, she was not, but because she had already lived too much pain at the hands of people who mistook cruelty for authority. They passed the glowing sign of a luxury hotel when Marcus noticed the police cruiser behind them. At first, he did not react. He had been black in America long enough to know when to notice without appearing to notice. The cruiser slipped into their lane and followed closely. Nia looked at the side mirror. Dad, I see him, Marcus said. We are not speeding. No, your registration is current. Yes. The light ahead turned yellow. Marcus slowed and stopped smoothly. The cruiser stopped behind them, too close to the bumper. Nia exhaled. Marcus felt the old familiar tightening in his chest. Not fear, something colder, something older. The memory of being 18 years old in Birmingham with his hands on the hood of a police car while an officer emptied his pockets onto the street. The memory of being called boy while wearing his first law school blazer. The memory of learning that a calm voice could save your life but never guarantee your dignity. The light turned green. Marcus drove. The cruiser followed. A moment later, blue lights flashed. Nia closed her eyes. Marcus pulled over beside a broad avenue near Centennial Olympic Park. The towers of downtown rose around them. People walked on sidewalks. Cars passed slowly. A few curious faces turned toward the scene. The cruiser stopped behind them. Marcus placed both hands on the steering wheel. Nia, he said quietly. I know, she said, placing her hands where they could be seen. Do not reach for anything unless I tell you. I know. Keep your voice steady. Dad, I know. Marcus nodded once. Behind them, Officer Grant Mercer stepped out of the cruiser. Grant Mercer was 47 years old, thick through the shoulders, red-faced, with a gray mustache that made him look older than he was. He had spent 23 years wearing a badge and had mistaken longevity for wisdom. On paper, he was a senior patrol officer with the Atlanta Police Department. In practice, he was the kind of man younger officers avoided when they wanted to keep their conscience clean. Mercer believed respect was something people owed him before he earned it. He believed fear was proof of control. And he believed black success was always suspicious. He had first noticed the navigator near Peachtree Street. Expensive vehicle, dark-tinted windows, black driver, young woman beside him. No obvious violation, no erratic movement, nothing but his own irritation rising like bile. He had told dispatch he was initiating a stop for our obstructed visibility and possible stolen vehicle indicators. There were no stolen vehicle indicators. He just did not like how the man drove calmly as if he belonged in the city. Mercer approached the driver's side window with one hand resting near his holster. He did not come like a public servant. He came like a man entering enemy territory. Marcus lowered the window. The air smelled of rain, hot pavement, and Mercer's cheap tobacco gum. License and registration, Mercer barked. Marcus looked at him steadily. Good afternoon, officer. May I ask the reason for the stop? I said license and registration, and I asked the reason for the stop. Mercer leaned closer. You hard of hearing. Nia turned her head slightly. Officer, my father is asking a lawful question. Mercer looked at her as if she had stepped out of place. I was not talking to you. Marcus lifted one hand slowly. My license is in my wallet inside my jacket pocket. Registration is in the glove compartment. I am informing you before I move. Mercer smirked. Look at you. Real rehearsed. Marcus said nothing. That annoyed Mercer more. You people watch a few videos and think you know the law. Nia's jaw tightened. Marcus felt it without looking at her. Officer, Marcus said, I will comply. But I am asking again. Why did you stop us? Mercer's eyes moved over the interior. Leather seats, polished wood trim. 2 phones in the console, a briefcase in the back. He saw the courthouse parking tag hanging from the mirror and ignored it. Your windows look too dark. They are within legal limit. You got proof of that. The dealership certification is in the glove compartment. Do not reach for it, Mercer snapped. Marcus froze. Mercer raised his voice. See, that is what I mean. You people always reaching. Nia turned fully now. He did not reach. Mercer pointed at her. One more word, and you are stepping out. Marcus spoke before Nia could answer. Officer, we are going to remain calm. No, Mercer said, I decide calm. Not you. A few pedestrians had stopped down the sidewalk. Someone lifted a phone. Mercer saw it and changed his posture. He straightened his back, widened his stance, and began performing authority for the camera. Step out of the vehicle, he said. Marcus held his gaze. Am I under arrest? You are being detained. For what suspected offense? Failure to obey a lawful order. Step out, Nia said, Dad. Marcus nodded. Slowly, he unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door. The moment his foot touched the wet pavement, Mercer grabbed his arm and yanked him out hard enough to twist his shoulder. Nia cried out, Hey! Mercer shoved Marcus against the side of the Navigator. Hands on the vehicle. Marcus obeyed. Nia opened her door. Mercer turned. Did I tell you to get out? You told both of us to step out, Nia said. Mercer moved toward her. Then get out and keep your mouth shut. Nia stepped onto the sidewalk with her hands raised. The street noise seemed to fade. Marcus could hear the clicking of phone cameras, the wet hiss of tires. His daughter breathing through anger. Mercer kicked Marcus's feet apart. Wider. Marcus said, Officer, there is no need for force. Mercer leaned into his ear. Around here, I decide what is needed. Marcus closed his eyes for a single second. He had sentenced men with less cruelty in their hands than the one pressing him into the vehicle. Mercer patted him down roughly, slapping pockets, pressing hard against ribs, tugging at his jacket. He found Marcus's wallet and pulled it free. What is this? My wallet. Mercer tossed it onto the hood without opening it. Then he turned to Nia. She stood tall, her chin lifted, hands visible. Do not touch me without legal cause, she said. Mercer laughed. Legal cause? You a lawyer? I am a law professor. That made Mercer's eyes brighten with spite. Of course you are. He stepped close. Too close. Marcus turned his head. Officer, do not intimidate my daughter. Mercer spun back. Your daughter needs to learn how to act during a police stop. Nia's voice was clear. My father has complied with every instruction. You have not stated a valid reason for this stop. You have used racially charged language. You have applied unnecessary force. You are being recorded by multiple witnesses. Mercer's face darkened. You think that scares me? No, Nia said. I think it should. For a moment, Mercer looked like he might strike her. Then another cruiser pulled up. Officer Brent Coleman stepped out. Younger, leaner, nervous. He had heard Mercer call for backup and expected drugs or violence. Instead, he saw a well-dressed older man pressed against a vehicle and a composed woman standing nearby with her hands raised. What do we have, Grant? Mercer did not look away from Nia. Suspicious vehicle, non-compliant occupants, possible weapon. Marcus spoke evenly. There is no weapon on my person. There is a secured firearm in the locked compartment of the vehicle. It is legally owned and registered. Mercer's head snapped toward him. So there is a gun. Marcus sighed. I am informing you because that is the responsible thing to do. Mercer drew his weapon. Get on the ground. Nia stepped forward. No. Coleman raised his hands. Grant, wait. On the ground, Mercer screamed. Both of you. Traffic slowed. Phones rose. Someone shouted from across the street they did not do anything. Mercer pointed his gun at Marcus's chest. Marcus lowered himself carefully to one knee, then to the wet pavement. Nia refused for half a second, not out of rebellion but disbelief. Then Marcus said Nia, just her name. She went down too. Mercer placed his knee into Marcus's back while Coleman reluctantly cuffed him. "You are making a mistake," Marcus said. Mercer leaned down. "Men like you always say that. Men like me," Marcus repeated softly. Mercer smiled. Nia heard it. Coleman heard it. The phones heard it. Mercer walked to the navigator and opened the driver's side door. "You cannot search that vehicle without probable cause," Nia said from the ground. Mercer did not look at her. "That is a lie," she said. Mercer froze, then turned with a terrible grin. "Add obstruction." He rummaged through the vehicle. Papers scattered. A leather case fell from the center console. He opened it and stopped. Inside was a polished judicial credential bearing the seal of the United States District Court. Mercer stared at it. Judge Marcus Bennett. For 1 second, something flickered in his face. Not remorse. Fear. He looked back at Marcus lying cuffed on the pavement. Then he looked at Nia. He opened another compartment and found her credentials. Professor Nia Bennett, Civil Rights Laws. Special Consultant to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Coleman stepped closer and saw the credential in Mercer's hand. Grant. Mercer shut the case. "What? That says judge." Mercer's jaw worked. "Fake." Coleman swallowed. "That does not look fake." Mercer shoved the credential into his pocket. "I said fake." Marcus heard every word. "Officer Mercer," he said from the ground, "I strongly advise you to stop now. Identify me through the federal courthouse. Call the clerk's office. Call the United States Marshal's Service. Call the chief judge. You have already crossed a line. Do not build a wall around yourself." Mercer walked over and crouched beside him. "You think a fancy fake badge and a courtroom costume scare me?" Marcus turned his face against the pavement to look at him. "No," Marcus said. "I think truth scares you." Mercer's nostrils flared. "Put them in the car." Coleman hesitated. "Grant, maybe we should verify." Mercer put them in the car. Coleman looked at Marcus, then at Nia. His hands shook as he helped Nia up. She looked him in the eyes. "You still have a choice," she said. Coleman looked away. At the station, choices disappear quickly when cowardice enters first. They were taken to a precinct building in downtown Atlanta, not far from government offices, courts, and polished towers, where people made decisions about other people's lives. The building looked clean from the outside, but inside it smelled like stale coffee, old paper, sweat, and fear. Mercer had called ahead. By the time they arrived, he had already shaped the story. 2 suspects, luxury vehicle, possible stolen credentials, possible firearm violation, aggressive behavior, possible drug involvement. A story like that can move through a police station faster than truth, because lies spoken with confidence often arrive dressed like facts. Sergeant Frank Dalton stood behind the booking desk when Marcus and Nia were brought in. Dalton was a tired man with a round face and suspicious eyes. He had survived 29 years by never standing in front of trouble if he could stand beside it. Mercer pushed Marcus forward. "Book him." Dalton looked at Marcus, then at the suit, then at the wet knees of his trousers, then at Nia, whose face was calm but whose eyes were burning. "Names? Marcus Bennett, Nia Bennett." Dalton typed slowly. Mercer tossed the judicial credential onto the counter. "Fake federal judge credential." Dalton picked it up. His face changed. "Grant." Mercer pointed at him. "Do not start." Dalton lowered his voice. "This looks real." "It is not real," Nia said. "Sergeant Dalton, that credential can be verified in less than 1 minute." Mercer slammed his hand on the desk. "Nobody asked you," Nia continued. "My father is Judge Marcus Bennett of the United States District Court. You are holding him unlawfully." Mercer laughed loudly so the room would hear him. "She says he is a federal judge." A few officers looked over. Some smirked. Some froze. One young officer whispered, "Wait, Marcus Bennett." Nia turned toward him. "Yes," Mercer shouted. "Shut up." The room fell silent. Marcus stood in cuffs, shoulders straight. He had been humiliated on sidewalks before. He had been underestimated in courtrooms before. But seeing Nia cuffed beside him carved something deep into him. Not rage. Something more disciplined. The kind of controlled fire that does not explode, but burns through steel. Chief Warren Pike entered from the hallway. He was a broad man in a pressed uniform, with a silver badge and eyes that calculated risk before morality. He had been police chief in Atlanta for 6 years. He liked press conferences, he liked charity galas, he liked appearing next to elected officials. He did not like surprises. "What is going on?" Mercer stepped forward quickly. "Chief, I stopped a suspicious vehicle. They had a firearm, fake judicial credentials, and they refused lawful commands." Pike looked at Marcus. "Who are you?" Marcus answered. "Judge Marcus Bennett, United States District Court." Pike blinked. The room seemed to inhale. Mercer laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Pike walked to the counter and picked up the credential. He examined it. His fingers tightened. "Where did you get this?" "From his vehicle," Mercer said. Pike looked at Marcus. "Judge Bennett." Marcus said nothing. Pike knew the name. Everyone in law enforcement who paid attention knew the name. Marcus Bennett was not just a federal judge. He had presided over major corruption trials, civil rights cases, organized crime prosecutions, and police misconduct hearings. His rulings were studied in law schools. His calm voice had ended careers. Pike handed the credential to Dalton. "Verify it." Mercer snapped. "Chief, come on." Pike turned slowly. "Did I ask you?" Dalton picked up the phone. Before he could dial, Mercer said, "We cannot let them use fake influence to intimidate us. That is how these people operate." "These people," Nia said. Mercer looked at her. "Yes, these people." Marcus turned his head toward Chief Pike. "Chief, you heard that?" Pike's face hardened, not from outrage, but from fear of liability. "Grant, step outside." "No." The word landed hard. Pike stared at him. "Excuse me." Mercer's breathing grew heavier. "No. I am not stepping outside so some judge can make me the villain. I did my job. I know what I saw." Nia said, "You saw a black man in a car you thought he did not deserve." Mercer turned on her. "I saw arrogance. You saw dignity and mistook it for disrespect." Mercer moved toward her. Marcus stepped between them as far as the cuffs allowed. "Do not take another step toward my daughter." Mercer pointed at Marcus. "You do not give orders in my house." Then Marcus finally changed. Not loudly, not theatrically. He simply lifted his chin, and the room felt the weight of him. "This is not your house," Marcus said. "This is a public building funded by citizens, bound by the Constitution, and now standing on the edge of a federal investigation because you were too proud to open a wallet." No one moved. For the first time, Mercer looked uncertain. Then Dalton's voice broke the silence. "Chief." Pike turned. Dalton was holding the phone with a pale face. "I called the courthouse. They confirmed it. He is Judge Bennett." Pike closed his eyes, looked at Mercer. Marcus did not. Mercer whispered no. Dalton continued, "And they said the United States Marshals are already on their way. So is someone from the Department of Justice." Pike's voice dropped. "Uncuff them." Mercer grabbed Marcus by the arm. "Do not!" Pike shouted. "Uncuff them now." Coleman stepped forward with the key. His hands shook as he removed Marcus's cuffs, then Nia's. Nia rubbed her wrists. Marcus looked at the red marks on her skin. Something in the room shifted. Everyone could feel it. Before, Marcus had been a suspect. Now he was a storm standing still. Pike cleared his throat. "Judge Bennett, I apologize for the misunderstanding." Marcus looked at him. "A misunderstanding is when two people arrive at confusion by accident," he said. "This was not confusion. This was a decision." Pike swallowed. Mercer backed away. Then the sound came. Sirens outside. Not one, many. A deep vibration rolled through the station windows. Officers turned toward the entrance. Blue and red lights flashed against the walls. The front doors opened, and United States Marshals entered first, followed by federal agents in dark jackets. Behind them walked Assistant Attorney General Rebecca Lawson, a woman with steel-gray eyes and the cold patience of someone who had already read the whole file. She walked straight to Marcus. "Judge Bennett." Marcus nodded. "Miss Lawson, Nia." Nia nodded. Lawson looked at their wrists, then at their clothes, then at Mercer. "Is that him?" That is Officer Grant Mercer." Lawson turned to the agents. "Secure him." Mercer stepped back. "Wait a minute." Two marshals moved toward him. Mercer reached for his sidearm. The room erupted. Hands shouted. Weapons drawn. Officers ducked. Pike yelled. Coleman froze. Marcus did not flinch. Nia did not move. Mercer's hand stopped above his holster as he saw 6 weapons pointed at his chest. "Do it," Lawson said quietly, "and this becomes the last mistake you ever make as a free man." Mercer lifted his hands. The marshals disarmed him, turned him against the wall, and cuffed him with the same mechanical finality he had used on others for years. "You cannot do this," Mercer said. "I am police." Lawson stepped close. "No, you are a defendant." Mercer looked around for help. Pike would not meet his eyes. Dalton stared at the floor. Coleman looked sick. Lawson spoke to the room. "This precinct is now under federal review. All body camera footage, dash camera footage, incident reports, arrest records, tow logs, and use of force records involving Officer Mercer are to be preserved immediately. Any deletion, alteration, or disappearance will be treated as obstruction of justice." Pike tried to speak. "Assistant Attorney General, this is a city matter." Lawson looked at him. "Not anymore." Then she turned to Marcus. "Judge Bennett, are you ready to proceed?" Marcus nodded. Nia looked at him. "Proceed with what?" Marcus took a breath. "Nia," he said softly, "this stop was not random in the way he thinks it was. The Department of Justice has been investigating a pattern of illegal stops, seizures, and fabricated charges in several major cities as one of them. Officer Mercer was already on the list." Nia stared at him. "You knew?" "I knew there was a network. I did not know he would stop us today." Lawson added, "Mercer is connected to a private attorney named Preston Vale, a bail consultant named Curtis Rowe, and several city officials suspected of profiting from unlawful stops and forced settlements." Nia looked at Mercer. He was sweating now. Marcus said, "Grant Mercer did not just pull over the wrong man. He pulled a thread tied to an entire machine. The machine began to break before sunset. Federal agents moved through the precinct like surgeons. Computers were seized. Filing cabinets were opened. Lockers were searched. Phones were placed into evidence bags. Officers were separated and interviewed. Some became defensive. Some became silent. Some began talking before anyone asked the first question. Coleman talked first. He sat in a small interview room with Nia and an investigator named Daniel Reeves. His face looked younger now, almost boyish, stripped of the borrowed courage he had worn besmesmer. I should have stopped him, Coleman said. Nia watched him carefully. Yes, you should have. I knew something was wrong. Then why did you obey? Coleman looked down. Because Mercer is Mercer. He trains rookies. He can ruin you. He tells supervisors you are soft. He puts you on bad shifts. He makes everyone laugh at you until you either become like him or leave. Nia leaned forward. That is not an excuse. I know. Do you? Coleman's eyes filled. My younger brother is black. My stepfather raised me. I know what Mercer is. I knew it. I stood there anyway. Nia's anger softened, but only slightly. The harm you permit is still harm, she said. Coleman nodded. I will testify. Across the hall, Sergeant Dalton admitted he had seized her falsify probable cause statements. Another officer admitted that towing companies paid referral fees. A clerk confessed that certain arrest files were rewritten before court appearances. Piece by piece, the story emerged. It was not just Mercer. It was a pipeline. Mercer would stop people near downtown, Buckhead, Midtown, and airport routes. Expensive cars were the easiest targets because they could be seized. Poor drivers were easier because they could be threatened. People from out of state were ideal because they were scared, unfamiliar with local courts, and desperate to leave. Preston Vale, a polished attorney with billboard ads across Atlanta, would send representatives to frighten detainees offering help. Tow fees, court fees, legal fees, settlement fees. Everyone took a cut. Some victims paid to make charges disappear. Some lost cars. Some lost jobs. Some lost custody visits. Some lost years' fighting records built on lies. And Mercer slept well every night, until Marcus Bennett. That evening, news vans gathered outside the precinct. Reporters stood under bright lights speaking urgently into cameras. The headline grew by the hour. Federal judge and daughter unlawfully detained by Atlanta officer. Civil rights investigation expands. Police corruption probe shakes city leadership. But Marcus did not give a statement. Not yet. He sat with Nia in a quiet conference room at the federal building while Lawson briefed them. Through the window, Atlanta glowed beneath the darkening sky. Nia held a cup of coffee she had not touched. Dad, Marcus looked at her. Why did you not tell me how deep this was? Because I wanted to know more before I carried it into your life. It is already in my life, I know. No, Nia said, her voice breaking for the first time. You taught me to stand up to this. You taught me the law. You taught me dignity. But today I was on the ground with a gun pointed at you. And for 1 second I was not a professor, not a consultant, not your daughter who knows what to say. I was just a little girl watching somebody threaten her father. Marcus's face changed. He reached across the table and took her hand. I am sorry. She shook her head. I am not saying it is your fault, I know. But I am still sorry. Nia looked away. Marcus said, when you were little, I used to think if I worked hard enough, rose high enough, became undeniable enough, I could build a shield big enough to cover you. Nia looked at him. Today reminded me that no title is big enough to protect us from every hatred, but it also reminded me of something else. What? The shield was never the title. The shield is truth. The shield is courage. The shield is people who refuse to look away. Nia wiped her eyes. Marcus continued. Mercer wanted us afraid. He wanted us reactive. He wanted our anger to become his excuse, but we stood. And now the people he hurt may finally be heard. Nia nodded slowly. Then let us make sure they are heard. The next morning, the story exploded nationwide. In New York, morning anchors replayed the footage of Mercer shouting orders and shoving Marcus against the navigator. In Chicago, legal analysts discussed how quickly a traffic stop could become a federal civil rights case. In Los Angeles, activists gathered outside City Hall with signs naming victims of unlawful stops. In Washington, lawmakers demanded hearings. But the most powerful footage was not the moment Mercer found the judicial credential. It was the moment Nia, cuffed and standing inside the precinct, said to him, "You saw dignity and mistook it for disrespect." That sentence moved like fire across the country. People repeated it in classrooms, churches, barbershops, courtrooms, and comment sections. It became more than a line. It became a mirror. Mercer sat in a federal holding cell watching the world turn against him. He had been suspended without pay. His house had been searched. His bank accounts were frozen. His wife had taken the children to her sister's home in Charlotte. His union representative had stopped promising miracles. Preston Vale, the lawyer who once treated Mercer like a brother, had not answered a single call. For the first time in years, Grant Mercer was alone, without a badge between him and consequence. He told himself he had done nothing wrong. Then he saw the video again. Not the edited clip online, the full dash camera footage. A federal investigator played it during questioning. There he was, leaning into the window. There he was, saying, "You people." There he was, pressing Marcus into the vehicle. There he was, drawing his weapon because a black man had calmly told the truth. There he was, calling the credential fake because the alternative meant admitting he had humiliated a federal judge in front of his daughter. Mercer looked away. Investigator Daniel Reeves paused the video. "Why did you refuse to verify the credential?" Mercer swallowed. "I thought it was fake." "Why, it looked fake." Reeves slid a photograph across the table. It showed the credential clearly. What part looked fake? Mercer did not answer. Reeves placed another photo down. Marcus on the pavement, Naya on her knees. Mercer holding a weapon. What part of them made you afraid? Mercer's mouth tightened. Reeves leaned back. You were not afraid, were you? You were offended, Mercer whispered. He talked down to me. He asked why he was stopped. He had that tone. What tone? Like he knew better. He did know better. He was a federal judge. Mercer's face twisted. I did not know that, Reeves said. But you knew he was a man. Mercer looked up. That should have been enough. The words hit harder than Mercer expected. For the first time, something cracked. Not enough to redeem him, not enough to erase anything, but enough for silence to enter. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected, because corruption built on arrogance is often sloppy beneath the surface. Mercer had kept texts. Vale had kept ledgers. City officials had kept calendars. Payments moved through shell companies with names that sounded respectable, but led back to the same few hands. The case expanded from Atlanta to Dallas, Chicago, Miami, and Baltimore. Similar patterns, similar stops, similar private contracts, similar victims. Marcus and Nia traveled to Washington to testify before a federal oversight committee. The hearing room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every seat. Families of victims sat together, holding photographs of sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters who had been dragged through a machine designed to turn fear into money. Marcus sat at the witness table in a dark suit. Nia sat beside him. A senator asked Marcus to describe what happened during the stop. Marcus did. He did not dramatize. He did not exaggerate. He did not perform pain for cameras. He gave the facts in the same steady voice he had used for decades in court. Then the senator asked, Judge Bennett, what went through your mind when Officer Mercer pointed a weapon at you? Marcus paused. I thought of my daughter, he said. The room went still. I thought of how many parents have stood in that same moment without cameras, without credentials, without anyone coming to verify who they were. I thought of the terrible burden we place on the innocent when we tell them to stay calm in the face of humiliation, as if their survival depends on being perfect while someone else is allowed to be reckless. Nia looked down. Marcus continued. I also thought of the law, not as words on paper, not as ceremony, but as a promise. And I wondered how many people in this country have never felt that promise arrive in time. The room stayed silent. Then Nia spoke. My father and I survived because the system recognized his title before it recognized our humanity. That is the wound. We cannot build justice on the hope that the victim turns out to be important. The unknown person should be protected. The poor person should be protected. The person without a camera should be protected. The person who cannot speak legal language should be protected. Rights are not rewards for status. They are the floor beneath every human being. That testimony became the moral center of the case. Back in Atlanta, Mercer's trial began in federal court. The courthouse was surrounded by media trucks. People lined the sidewalks holding signs. Some demanded justice, some defended police, some simply wanted to witness the fall of a man who had once believed no one could touch him. Mercer entered the courtroom in a gray suit that did not fit right. Without the uniform, he looked smaller. The badge had been his armor, his personality, his permission slip. Now he sat at the defense table with nothing but a lawyer, a thinning folder, and a face that had aged 10 years in a few months. Marcus was not the presiding judge, of course. He sat in the front row as a witness and victim. Nia sat beside him. Presiding over the case was Judge Eleanor Whitaker, a sharp-eyed woman from Chicago known for running her courtroom like a cathedral of consequences. The prosecution laid out the case piece by piece. The unlawful stop, the false report, the racial language, the illegal search, the assault, the obstruction, the conspiracy with Preston Vale, the pattern of prior victims. Then came the witnesses. A delivery driver from Miami who lost his van after Mercer claimed to smell drugs that did not exist. A nurse from Dallas who missed a shift and lost her job because she was held overnight on a false charge. A college student from Chicago who had been stopped on the way to a scholarship interview and arrived in tears with bruised wrists. An elderly man from Baltimore who spent his retirement savings fighting a fabricated firearm charge after Mercer claimed a tire iron was a weapon. Every witness had a different face. The same story lived underneath. Mercer watched them to testify. At first, he avoided their eyes. Then, slowly, he began to look. Not because he wanted to, because Judge Whitaker made him. Mr. Mercer, she said during one outburst, you will face this courtroom. You spent years forcing people to look at your authority. Now you will look at their pain. The hardest testimony came from Nia. She took the stand in a navy suit, hair pulled back, voice steady. The courtroom quieted before she began. The prosecutor asked, Ms. Bennett, what did you feel when Officer Mercer pointed his weapon at your father? Nia inhaled. I felt a fear I did not want to admit, she said. Not because I doubted my father, because I knew that dignity does not always save black men from bullets. Marcus closed his eyes. Nia continued. I watched my father, a man who has given his life to the law, treated as if his life depended on satisfying the ego of someone who had already decided he was guilty. And I remember thinking that if this can happen to him, in broad daylight, in downtown Atlanta with witnesses around, then what has been happening to people with no title, no camera, no one waiting for them at the courthouse? The prosecutor asked. Did Officer Mercer ever apologize? Nia looked at Mercer. No. The word entered him like a blade. Mercer's lawyer tried to argue that Mercer had made a mistake under pressure. He claimed the stop escalated because Marcus and Nia were unusually calm, which Mercer interpreted as suspicious. He claimed the firearm created fear. He claimed the judicial credential appeared unusual. He claimed Mercer had acted with an imperfect but honest judgment. Then the prosecution played Mercer's own body camera footage. His voice filled the courtroom. You people always reaching. The jurors watched. Then came the precinct footage. You saw dignity and mistook it for disrespect. Nia's voice filled the room. Mercer stared at the table. By the time Preston Vale testified, the defense was already collapsing. Vale walked in wearing a plain suit, his famous confidence gone. He admitted he had paid Mercer through consulting fees, referral bonuses, and cash envelopes. He admitted Mercer targeted drivers he believed would be easy to pressure. He admitted race was part of the selection. The prosecutor asked, what did Officer Mercer call these stops? Vale swallowed. Harvest runs, the courtroom murmured. Judge Whitaker struck the gavel. Order, the prosecutor asked, harvesting what? Vale looked at Mercer. Money, fear, leverage. Mercer shook his head slowly. Not because it was false, because hearing it aloud made it real. When Mercer finally took the stand against his lawyer's advice, everyone leaned forward. He still wanted to save himself, but something had changed. The prosecutor asked, Officer Mercer, did Judge Bennett commit a traffic violation before you stopped him? Mercer stared ahead. No. Did you smell marijuana before searching his vehicle? No. Did you believe his judicial credential was fake? Mercer hesitated. At first, yes. And after you saw the quality of it? Mercer's lips trembled. I did not want it to be real. Why not? Because if it was real, then I had to admit what I had done. The courtroom went silent. The prosecutor lowered his voice. What had you done? Mercer looked toward Marcus and Nia. I saw a black man in a nice car and decided he was a criminal. Nia's face did not change. Marcus watched him carefully. Mercer continued, voice rough. I told myself it was experience, instinct, police work, but it was prejudice wearing a uniform. I used the badge to make people feel small because it made me feel powerful. I thought respect meant people obeying fast enough to keep me comfortable. I was wrong. His lawyer closed his eyes. The prosecutor asked. Mercer looked at Nia. For the first time, there was no smirk, no swagger, no performance. Yes, he said. Judge Whitaker watched him. The jury watched him. The victims watched him. Nia did not forgive him in that moment. Marcus did not either. Because apology is not a key that unlocks immediate mercy from the people you harmed. But the room felt the difference between a man cornered and a man finally seeing the shape of his own damage. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Guilty on all major counts. Deprivation of rights under color of law, obstruction, conspiracy, false reporting, unlawful search and seizure, assault under color of authority. At sentencing, the courtroom was full again. Mercer stood before Judge Whitaker in a dark suit, hands clasped in front of him. His face had changed. Prison had not yet taken him, but consequence already had. Judge Whitaker asked if he wished to speak. Mercer turned toward the gallery. I do not deserve forgiveness, he said. I know that. I spent years thinking I was protecting the streets, but I was poisoning them. I told myself the people I stopped were dangerous, because that made it easier to treat them like they were less than human. Judge Bennett, Ms. Bennett, I humiliated you. I threatened you. I put a gun on a man who had done nothing but ask me why. I put fear in a daughter's heart, and I cannot undo that. His voice broke. To the others I hurt, I am sorry. I know those words are small. I know some of you lost jobs, cars, homes, trust, sleep, dignity. I helped build a machine that fed on people who already had too much to carry. I was proud of being feared. Now I understand fear is not respect. It is just damage moving from one person to another. He turned back to the judge. I am guilty. The courtroom was silent. Judge Whitaker looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Mercer, remorse matters, but remorse does not erase harm. A badge is not a throne. It is not a weapon for personal insecurity. It is a burden of restraint. You betrayed that burden again and again. You will have time to think about the difference between authority and character. She sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison. Mercer lowered his head. No shouting, no claims of conspiracy, no final insult. Just the sound of a man hearing the door close on the life he had built from other people's suffering. Months passed. The corruption network continued to fall. Preston Vale went to prison. Chief Warren Pike resigned in disgrace after evidence showed he had ignored complaints for years. Several city officials were indicted. A towing company lost its contract. A bail firm collapsed. More than 200 cases were reopened across Atlanta and other cities. Families who had been dismissed for years finally received calls from investigators who wanted to hear their stories. Marcus and Nia founded the Bennett Justice Initiative, a national program focused on unlawful stops, police accountability, legal aid, and restoring records damaged by corrupt enforcement. They refused to let the story become only about one bad officer. Marcus insisted on saying it wherever he spoke. The danger is not just the cruel man. The danger is the quiet room that lets him continue. 1 year after the stop, Marcus and Naya returned to Atlanta for the opening of a legal clinic near downtown. The same streets shone after rain again. The same towers caught the light. But this time the crowd gathered not around a scene of humiliation, but around a doorway of hope. A mother from Dallas cried as Nia told her that her son's record had been cleared. An older man from Baltimore hugged Marcus with trembling arms. A young student from Chicago, once stopped and humiliated by Mercer, had enrolled in law school. She told Marcus she wanted to become a public defender. Marcus smiled. Then become the kind they fear because you cannot be bought. Nia laughed.
Dad, what?
It is good advice. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood alone outside the clinic, looking at the city. Naya came beside him. Do you ever think about Mercer? Marcus was quiet sometimes. Do you hate him? Marcus watched traffic move under the amber light. No, Naya looked surprised. Marcus continued. Hate keeps a man living in your house rent-free. I will not give him that room. Do you forgive him? Marcus took longer to answer. Forgiveness is not pretending the wound was small. It is deciding the wound will not become your master. I am still working on that. Nia nodded. Inside a federal prison in West Virginia, Grant Mercer sat in a small classroom with other inmates. He wore plain prison clothes. His hair had grown thinner. His shoulders had lost their old aggressive square. On the desk before him was a workbook from a restorative justice program. The instructor had asked them to write a letter they might never send. Mercer stared at the blank page. For years, words had been easy when they were commanded. Step out, hands up, get down, shut up. Now words had weight. He began to write. Judge Bennett and Ms. Bennett, I do not expect you to read this. I do not expect you to forgive me. I am writing because for most of my life I used words to control people, and now I need to use them to tell the truth. I was not afraid of you because you were dangerous. I was afraid because you were dignified. Your dignity made me feel small, and instead of asking why, I tried to make you smaller. He stopped. His hand shook. He kept writing. When I saw your credential, Judge Bennett, I should have stopped. But I had built my whole life on never admitting I was wrong. That pride cost me my freedom, but worse than that, it cost other people their peace. I used to think the badge made me a man. Now I know a badge only reveals the man wearing it. He put the pen down and cried quietly, not loud enough for sympathy, not dramatic enough for performance, just the broken sound of a person finally trapped with the truth. He would still serve his sentence. He would still wake up behind bars. He would still carry the names of the people he harmed. But somewhere inside the punishment, recognition had begun. And recognition, though late, is the first honest step away from darkness. On the anniversary of the stop, Marcus gave a speech at a packed auditorium in Washington, D.C. Nia sat in the front row. Behind her were families, students, lawyers, officers, judges, activists, and ordinary citizens who had come because the story had become larger than the video. Marcus walked to the podium. He waited until the applause faded, then he spoke. A year ago, my daughter and I were pulled from our vehicle, forced to the ground, and treated as threats before we were treated as human beings. The nation learned my name because I was a judge. But tonight I do not want you to remember me because of my title. He looked across the room. Remember the person whose name never becomes a headline. Remember the father late for work. Remember the mother driving home. Remember the student with a backpack. Remember the nurse in scrubs. Remember the man whose hands shake when lights flash behind him because he knows innocence does not always protect the body. He paused. Justice is not proven by how it treats the powerful when cameras are rolling. Justice is proven by how it treats the vulnerable when nobody important is watching. Nia's eyes filled, Marcus continued, and to those who wear authority, hear me clearly. Power is not greatness. Control is not leadership. Fear is not respect. If your authority requires another person's humiliation in order to feel real, then you are not strong. You are broken, and you are breaking others with you. The room was silent. But there is another way, Marcus said. There is always another way. The badge can protect. The bench can serve. The law can heal. The voice can defend. The witness can speak. The bystander can step forward. The guilty can confess. The wounded can rise. And a nation can still become better than its worst habits if enough people refuse to call cruelty normal. He looked at Nia. My daughter once said that rights are not rewards for status. They are the floor beneath every human being. I believe that. I believe it more now than I did before, because I have seen what happens when that floor is stolen. And I have seen what happens when people come together to rebuild it. The applause rose slowly, then thundered. Nia stood. Others stood. Marcus did not smile like a man enjoying victory. He smiled like a father grateful his daughter was still standing. When the event ended, Marcus and Nia stepped outside into the Washington night. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Nia said, "You know you are getting more dramatic with age." Marcus looked offended. I am measured. You quoted me in front of Congress, the press, and half the legal world. Because you were right, she smiled. I know. They walked toward the car waiting at the curb. This time, when a police cruiser passed slowly, Nia noticed Marcus notice it. Some memories do not leave quickly. But he did not shrink. She did not either. They got into the car, and Marcus looked at his daughter. Where to? Nia leaned back. Home. Marcus nodded. Home. The car pulled away from the curb and merged into the bright river of traffic. And somewhere far away, in a prison classroom, Grant Mercer folded a letter he did not know if he had the courage to send. He had once believed Tuhor meant making people fear him. Now he understood the truth too late. Real power is the discipline to protect someone you could hurt. Real justice is not revenge. It is truth standing up after being shoved to the ground. And the lesson of Marcus Bennett and Nia Bennett was not simply that a racist officer pulled over the wrong man. It was that no human being should need to be the right man to be treated with dignity. No father should need a federal title to survive a traffic stop. No daughter should have to watch her father humiliated before the law remembers his humanity. And no badge, no office, no uniform, no courtroom, no city, no system, and no proud man should ever forget this simple truth. The measure of justice is not how loudly it speaks when the powerful are harmed. The measure of justice is whether it whispers protection over the powerless before the harm begins. That is the lesson Marcus carried. That is the lesson Nia taught. That is the lesson Mercer learned behind bars. And that is the lesson every city, every officer, every judge, every citizen, and every heart must remember. Because dignity delayed is dignity denied. And when truth finally arrives, it does not knock softly. It opens the door, turns on the light, and shows everyone what was hiding in the dark.